Welcome to Soul Lab, a Christian-based podcast utilizing logic, history, science, and scripture to better understand the Christian faith. And now your hosts, Delaney and AJ.
Welcome back, guys, to part 2 of Spiritual Distractions. I'm your host, Delaney.
And I'm AJ.
And we're just going to hop right back into where we left off.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just going to continue with the conversations. Listen in. You want to recap what we discussed last time?
Yeah, let's
go ahead.
It. So let's talk about part 1. Yeah, so this is part 2. If you missed part 1, go back and watch that. It's the previous episode. Part 1 and 2, all about spiritual distractions, all right? In part 1, Delaney and I went over what spiritual distractions are. What do we mean when we say spiritual distractions? We went over some examples in scripture, and we went over how that applies to everyday life, of how we are, how most people are distracted spiritually, how and what that means. But so that was the intro to really the main topic, which is what do we do about it?
Like, how do we combat it?
Yeah, how do we combat spiritual distractions? What do we do? So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
So you ready to get into it?
Yeah, getting into some heavy debate.
Let's do it. Now we got to get into probably the most important part of today's episode, which is what do we do about it? Like, how do we fight that? How do we combat these distractions? How do we not be distracted? Very important question. It's probably the most important question on this episode is how do we not get distracted? Yeah. Spiritually and religiously. Do you want to go over some and then I go over some?
Yeah. So I am going to go ahead and apologize because mine are in the wrong order. So I'm going to jump around a little bit because after discussion, I want to bring it up in this order. So the first one I'm going to discuss is self-examination.
Oh, okay.
So if you want to read this verse of 2 Corinthians 13:5.
Yeah. 2 Corinthians. Examine yourselves to see whether you are in the faith. Test yourselves. Or do you not realize this about yourselves, that Jesus Christ is in you, unless indeed you fail to meet the test?
Let me ask you, when it says test yourselves, in AJ's opinion,
Yes.
What do you think that means?
So I'm a huge believer in humbling yourself by asking other people for their input.
Okay.
And so I feel like one of the great ways, this is just my opinion, to test yourself is to ask your fellow Christians, specifically mentors. If you have them, if you don't, you should have Christian mentors. Just be like, hey, what's your opinion of me as a disciple of Christ? You know, I feel like that's a great test, to just ask them that question and get their honest feedback. And it's really shocking how few Christians are willing to do that. And because you have to kind of open yourself up there.
I would challenge too, if that's a great, let me just first say that. And if that's kind of confusing as to that definition, disciple of Christ, maybe say, hey, in what ways do you see Christ in me? In what ways would you like to see more of Christ in me? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
One of my biggest flaws is that I love gossip. Okay. Another thing about me though, is that I often know people's business, so I cannot spread gossip because it's secret. And so I just sit there and absorb it. And I think that's still wrong for me to sit there and absorb it excitedly. And so something I ask myself a lot is I would like to see, I don't think Christ would sit in a room and be like, ooh, let me hear more details of these people. You know what I'm saying? And so I think something I have to work on is that, not being like that.
Gotcha.
The self-examination testing. Another way to test yourself is to sit I like to do at the end of the day. Sometimes the end of the week is better, and just say, in what ways did I meet my expectations? In what ways did I did not? And so it's not really like a test, like a written test, like saying, hey, like, how did I fail? How did I succeed? It's more of a, hey, let me just look back over and what could have gone better. And also make sure you say what did go well. Because if you don't say what did go well, then next week you might not continue to do that. You have to recognize the good and make sure the good stays. That makes sense.
Absolutely agree with that. Don't necessarily only beat yourself up and accept the positive as well.
Right.
Yeah.
If you ever talk to a coach or anything, and they'll say, sandwich one negative thing between two positives, or I always gave two positives, feedback, and then positive again. And I'm just swim coach, because that would make the kids like, oh, I'm doing really good. Oh, there's one thing I can do to be even better. Okay, cool. I'm still doing good though. And you can do it to yourself too, because a lot of people don't realize when you talk to yourself, your brain processes it as if someone else is talking to you. So you still the thing, if you talk negatively to yourself, you're going to believe it as if someone else said it to you. Maybe even more, because you respect your own opinion. You know what I'm saying? So you got to just speak to yourself with respect and honor that. And so
that's pretty cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. It is something I say to my clients. I'll hope it's accurate.
Yeah.
Okay. So another thing is prioritizing. So the question though, we said a lot, prioritize, like, what do you prioritize? And we can all say, oh, God, friends, family, spouse. You can make a list, but how do you prioritize? That's the question. How do you go about doing that? Do you want to share how you go about doing that?
So when you say, I just want to clarify, when you say prioritize, do you mean like you have a hierarchy of importance of like, here's the most important thing to me?
Correct.
Here's second, here's third. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, I think the most important part in having a hierarchy, and I'll just tell you the reason that this resonates with me really is I use this in business actually.
Yeah.
Is my employees know that I have a hierarchy of importance in my
Mhm.
business. And that's what I call it. Like whenever my top leadership, whenever I hire a new employee, this is actually one of the speeches that I give them, but my goal is for them really to understand this. Anyways, so the hierarchy of importance is basically what is the most important thing to you? What's second? What's third? And the
Mhm.
thing is, if you don't know it, if you don't have that hierarchy of importance, if you don't actually have that filter, you're going to be thrown in all these different directions. You're not going to get the right things done. And there's a good chance you'll end up being inefficient and kind of wasting your time.
Mhm.
And so as a Christian, I have a hierarchy of importance, and that's going to be love God, love others, disciple the world. Like
Okay.
that calling, that combined is my number one hierarchy of importance.
How do you make sure it happens?
So I think the first step is to actually have the hierarchy. That's
Yeah.
my opinion.
So establish a
You have
hierarchy.
to establish it. The second thing is I think on a regular basis, and it could be every night when you go to bed praying to God about it, however frequent you think you need. But I think just asking the question, did I follow my hierarchy of importance today?
Okay.
The things that I said were most important,
Mhm.
did I follow that? So I said earlier, this makes sense to me because I use it in business, but that's actually what I tell my employees.
Yeah.
So in business, my hierarchy of importance is I tell them, take care of each other.
Mhm.
That's the number one rule, is that my employees have to take care of each other. They have to
Mhm.
protect each other, watch out for each other, be respectful, be loving. That is the most important thing to me in my business.
Yeah.
After that is taking care of the customers.
Okay.
As long as they're happy, that's my number one, and the customers are happy, that's my number two. Then we can get to the third level, which is run a great business.
Okay.
Which for me is like in McDonald's, what is restaurants. So they know, take care of each other, then worry about the customers, and then we worry about running a great business. And
Okay.
and I think it's important to do that, because if I don't do that, it's easy for us to get fixated on the wrong things. It's easy
Right.
for them to get distracted and say,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, our service times are
Yeah.
awful, or we just
Yeah.
wasted this food. It's okay, but focus on the first thing first, right?
So sometimes it's hard to figure out what those priorities should be, like to pick them out. So you've picked out some great ones. Just to say that, okay? So you've got some great ones that you apply
Thank
both.
you.
Yes, and you've described self-examination at the end of the day, asking
Mhm.
myself, did I make this? So that's kind of what I discussed earlier.
Mhm.
So sometimes people struggle with figuring out, what do I prioritize? What should be first, okay? So when you're trying to figure out what to prioritize, a good way to go about it is perhaps think, what should my goal be? What is my goal? What am I trying to accomplish?
Right.
And then with that in mind, what's my focus? What can I focus on to reach that goal? And that focus is going to be your priorities.
How do you prioritize? I think for you to prioritize, so we're specifically talking about spiritual distractions, right? For you to figure out what even to prioritize, I think you have to stop, turn off the podcast and the Instagram and whatever's distracting you, TV,
Yeah.
and just have some meditation time where you ask yourself the question, what is the most important thing to me? Like, I can tell you what my hierarchy of importance is, like what's most important to me, but I think everyone has to ask that question for themselves. And so I feel like the first step in figuring it out is just stopping and asking the question, what is most important to me? Is it actually your religious beliefs? Is it God? Is it being a better disciple? Is it being more like Christ? And then after that, is it maybe your spouse? Is it after that, maybe friends and family? Is it a specific nonprofit you support? Is it a hobby you love? But I think everyone has to stop and ask that question, what actually is the filter that I look through when I make decisions of my hierarchy?
Speaking specifically about your spiritual hierarchies, how do you prioritize those?
You're asking me how I prioritize
Your
it.
spiritual.
Yeah.
priorities.
So you're saying, my hierarchy of importance, my number one is going to be God. It's going to be my religious and spiritual beliefs.
So it's going to be, be more specific.
So do you want to break that section down?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
For me right now, I don't think that I have them organized in a way where one's more important than the other. I would say, I guess that's not true. I think Jesus's new commandment would be my number one, which is love God and love others.
Okay.
So Jesus says, this new commandment I give you. And the understanding is that this is the greatest commandment. I mean, that's what it's called, is the greatest commandment. The idea is that this commandment replaces all of the old laws, and that's debatable. I mean, among Christians in different denominations, they have different beliefs on this. I'll tell you, my conviction is that the greatest commandment, the new commandment, trumps all other commandments. It is the main filter we look through. He says, love your God. And he says the second is like the first, but that phrase actually means the second is equal to the first. So he says, love God and love others. So I think that is my number one filter. That is my number one goal. That is my number one focus.
There you go.
And right after that, like barely after that, is the Great Commission, discipling the world. Yeah.
So going back to your first one, so that would be like your goal. Let's see your greatest goal. Okay.
Yeah, yes.
So then with that in mind,
Yeah.
just trying to get to in the past
I
5
got you.
minutes. So with that in mind, then you say, what is your focus, right?
Okay.
So if you're trying to emulate Christ, is what we're kind
Mhm.
of talking about, right? Show kindness to others, basically is what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. So then what should your focus net be? And that's where kind of the self-reflection comes in. What am I missing? What should I be
Yeah.
adding in? And then once you figure out your focus, you can say what mission statement aligns. So what was the verse you said?
So in the Gospels, it's mentioned more than once, but in the book of Matthew is where it's mentioned, and I'm summarizing, but it's mentioned, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. And the second is like the first, love others.
That's your mission statement.
In the book of John, Jesus says, "A new
Yeah.
commandment I give you, love others as I have loved you."
Okay.
Yeah. So I would say yes. You could call that my mission statement, my number one goal, my priority. Yeah.
Okay. So let's discuss some like ways in which we can refocus from our spiritual distractions. Yeah. What you got?
Some other ways in which we can focus on combating our spiritual distractions. So you talked about one of mine, which was have a clear vision. So have a clear idea of what even is your hierarchy of importance. What are your goals? One of the things that I mentioned this earlier, but spending time in prayer or meditation regularly.
Okay. So let's discuss what meditation is. And that's really just aware and present in the moment. So it's being very like, I guess, mindful, as just as the word says, about like where you are, your body, all that good stuff. So that's the way the meditation that I think of. Something I encourage people to do too is when they meditate is to like whatever crosses their mind to focus on it, because there's a reason your brain pulled it to the front. There's a reason your brain was like, oh, let's think about this.
Yeah.
And so thinking about that, but not controlling where your brain goes.
When I say worldly meditation, what I'm saying is basically just anything that's not having to do with your spirituality or your religious. Well, my opinion is that the idea of meditating is basically the idea of you are sitting in a very quiet space, trying to get as many thoughts out of your head as possible. Either one, you're just trying to relax. That's a common meditation, is you're just trying to empty everything out and relax. So a great way to combat spiritual distractions is to spend time in prayer or meditation regularly. I'm specifically talking about, so prayer and meditation are not the same thing. So when I say prayer, which can be a form of meditation, is you spending time conversing with God and doing and having that conversation. I think that it's going to center you on your values that we talked about earlier. I think that can be a form of meditation, in my opinion, but also just there's ways in which you can meditate in general that I think are focused on centering yourself with God, focusing on, hey, what's most important? How can I expand on that? And so I'll just use an example of me from last year. It's actually kind of what led to this podcast for me. Is I spent some time in prayer and meditation asking myself a specific question. And so there was a focus. And that question was, how does AJ prioritize loving God, loving others, and the Great Commission? What does that look like? And through that prayer and meditation is what led to me realizing that I felt convicted, that I felt like this podcast would be a great platform to do those things. And so that was just me investing time into that. Does that make sense? So So
you're just more of a deep thinking kind of a place that you go.
Yes.
Okay. I like it. Yeah. So for me,
I don't know how deep it is, but
for me, it's different. It's more of a relaxation, sitting and feeling the room, feeling what's going on around me, feeling what's going on inside of me, and really figuring out what's on my mind. Because if I can figure out what's on my mind, I can figure out what's behind that. If I'm feeling anxious, why? If I can sit in my anxiety for long enough, which sounds odd, sit in your anxiety. If you sit in your anxiety long enough that you can figure out what is making me anxious and how do I solve this?
Yeah. I like that.
And then speaking of anxiety, going to Philippians 4:6, you want to read that for us?
Yeah. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God.
I'm going to download the whatever Bible app you have, because
maybe you should just use the app.
I have the app, but which app is it?
It's called
the Bible.
YouVersion. I think it is the most trustworthy Bible to use, personally.
I don't have that app.
YouVersion?
Yeah.
It's awesome.
I'll have to download
It's pretty
it.
cool.
I like mine because it sends me a Bible verse every day.
Yeah, this one does too. If you want it. Actually, this one does send me one every day.
Mine lets me share it to my Instagram.
So does this one, huh? I doubt there's anything this one doesn't do. I listened to the whole Bible in a year on this. It has a plan for literally everything too. On the plans section, you can type in any topic you want. Let's just talk about YouVersion real quick.
You and I were supposed to read the Bible this year. Remember we discussed that?
We are reading the Bible.
No, cover to cover.
We can do that. While we're on the topic, YouVersion, amazing app. Even if you're not a Christian, a lot of great information on there.
Not sponsored.
But it's not sponsored. I wish. But the YouVersion is a phenomenal Bible app. So you can do studies on it. You can very quickly search any word you want. Like one time for this, actually, I use it a lot for research for this podcast, but her and I did a study on dragons. And so I literally typed in the word dragon and all of a sudden, boom, everywhere in the Bible where the word dragon was used pops up. So it's really cool.
Makes sense why I couldn't find it in my Bible app. I thought you were using my Bible app.
Oh.
So.
Explains it.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Here's a really obvious way that we combat distractions. So this is probably the easiest way to combat the distractions that we talked about. But at the same time, this has got to be the most difficult for human beings to just do. And
what is it? Removing the distraction entirely?
Removing worldly influencers. For example, maybe putting a limit on your phone, putting a limit on social media.
Yeah.
For some people, it could be something that's an idol to them, such as could be alcohol, could be porn, whatever. But just finding ways to get those removed from your life, putting restrictions in place. If it's gossip, putting limits there.
Why would you point to me when you said that?
Because you mentioned it earlier.
I did.
Yeah, but I think it's just putting limits in place. And I do want to read 1 John 2:15. The title is actually called Do Not Love the World. All right. So it says, do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh and the desires of the eyes and the pride of life is not from the Father, but is from the world. And so it's kind of like the idea of a slave cannot serve two masters, right? You have to pick. And so you can either serve God or you can serve the world. And so the best way to, in my opinion, to not serve the world is to remove things that you know are negative influences that are causing you to be distracted.
Including people.
Absolutely. We talked earlier, like people can be distractions. There could be people in our lives who are just causing us to fall short in certain ways. And it's tough. I've had to remove people from my life. This is just a little personal, but I've had to remove people from my life who I felt like were encouraging me to make poor decisions that I felt went against my spiritual or religious beliefs. And it's tough to do that. I realized one day I felt convicted it was necessary. And I'm not saying you shouldn't be around people that are, let's say, like sinful, right? Jesus spent a lot of time with sinners. But if you know, like someone's a specific stumbling block for you, maybe it's not wise to have that person around. So anyways, so I say to say, this is the most obvious one. This is the one that should be easiest, but it's hard for humans to let go of things, to remove these obstacles. They're idols or addictions to us in a lot of ways, or it's uncomfortable to get rid of them. But it's probably the most powerful way.
And talking about issues with other people too, the Bible talks about the importance of confessing your sins too.
Oh, you're saying like this is another way.
It's another way.
Oh,
yeah.
okay, yeah.
And sorry, I didn't mean to just.
No, you're good.
But that's important too. And I think we often don't realize how important it is to communicate. And I think sometimes that ends up, you get in a very dark place when you don't talk for so long to other people. And just being able to say, hey, I'm struggling with this. This is distracting me. Can you hold me accountable? Or can I just talk to you about it?
Yes.
Being able to just say that to somebody and being able to have somebody there to hear you. Even if they're not going to say anything about it, even if they don't respond, just having it said out loud sometimes makes the challenge seem more conquerable.
Absolutely. So I was actually going to talk about this as well, but it's the idea that as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. The idea that as Christians, we are called to hold each other accountable. We are called to call each other out. We are called to be in group settings. We can't survive in this world alone. Like we need each other, especially from especially in discipleship. I think having mentors is critical. First off, just as someone who's really driven, I feel like you should have mentors in every area of life. Like you should have, if you're in business, mentors, financial mentors, you should have mentors in fitness, every area. If your filter is that God's the most important thing, then obviously you need spiritual mentors. Right. And I've been, I think, really blessed with having many great people come through my life who have helped me a ton and helped me grow through the years. One of
the faith-based practice that I work at, they have a mentorship program that's just for that,
so
which
cool.
I think is awesome. And it's specifically designed to aid in people of all ages. You can start with like teenagers or kids who need it. And I think that's super important because even after, of course, it's like a service, so you pay for it. But if you learn at a young age to look for mentors like that, then when you get to a point in life where you can reach out to someone who's not doing it for a living, like someone at the gym or someone like a church leader or someone that you admire,
So not just mentors, but maybe having a small group.
Peers, yeah.
I like to use a phrase like you fellow Christ followers who you're running towards Christ with, who you feel like are challenging you and positively in the right way to be more like Christ, right? I think it's important to have that accountability. So this last thing that I'm going to say is this is my challenge. This is my challenge to myself, my challenge to you, and this is my challenge to all of you guys that are listening, okay? If you really want to fight off these spiritual distractions, all right, the most important thing, and this is my challenge, be honest with yourself. Identify where you are actually falling short, all right? Call yourself out on it, and then make a plan to combat that for that specific area. So I think you have to take accountability. You have to say, okay, I'm just going to sit down and recognize this is the area I fall short where I know I'm distracted and do something about it, okay? Because I just want to like make this clear. Jesus, one of the famous, it's in Romans, but one of the most famous scary verses in scripture. I'm just going to paraphrase, but it's the verse where Jesus says, you'll cast out demons in my name. You'll perform miracles in my name. You'll come before me one day and I'll say, begone, I do not know you because you do not have love. And that verse is basically saying like, you can call yourself a Christian all day. You may even do certain things right all day. But at the end of the day, that's not enough.
Right.
You can't just keep sinning, keep falling short from God and just, yes, you can keep praying for forgiveness and you'll be forgiven, but it's a true mark of how much you believe something is based on actions and your desire to actually change your situation. And if you just keep allowing something to happen that you know God's calling you not to do, that's a problem. And that's a fear of me personally, is like, I feel like if I don't fix this thing that I know is putting a wedge between me and Christ, I'm going to get further from Christ, right? So here is my challenge for myself, for you, and for you guys. All right. This is my first question I want us all to wrestle with is ask yourself this. What is one area where you are falling short, where you are distracted, where you are not doing what you're supposed to be doing, or you're doing what you shouldn't be doing? Okay. That's the first question. My next question is, and this is going to really, you got to dig deep and really ask yourself this. Once you identify that, are you actually giving 100% effort to fix it, to change it, to do something different? And are you actually praying to God with 100% belief that God's got your back? Because I think those are the two things you got to do together is you got to give 100% effort and you got to pray to God with 100% belief. I leave you guys with that challenge. Wrestle with that, please. I think that's important for our development as Christians, as disciples. Anything else on that? So all of the things that we just mentioned, all of those are tools at our disposal to fight the good fight, to stay on the narrow path, as Jesus calls it. All of these things are tools we can use that build what I call the muscle of self-control.
Okay.
So just an analogy that I really like that sticks well with me, and maybe other people that are into bodybuilding or powerlifting, is the idea that all of these have to do with the idea of building the muscle of self-control, where we have to make these decisions that we know are difficult but good for us. And just like how with a muscle, it takes time and consistency to build a muscle, right? You have to consistently tear down the muscle and rebuild it, not a one-day thing. You have to be committed to it. In that same way, this muscle of self-control that's in us, it takes time, it takes patience, perseverance, and it's not going to be a one-time thing. No one's going to go call out one thing they're doing and be like, oh, I fixed that, I'm good. It's going to take repeated attempts, right? So I tend to say to people, to encourage people, don't give up. Like Delaney said earlier, I forget how you worded it, but recognize yes, we can fall short. The devil would tell you that, cool, you failed, you're a failure the rest of your life. Not true. Continue to never give up, to be tenacious, continue to fight the good fight, and continue to strive to be more like Christ every day. And so the more you do it, the more you genuinely put in that effort, the easier it actually gets, right? There's a lot of study done on this subject. I'm going to put this in the show notes as well, but there was another study done. It was on the subject of willpower and self-control. And basically it's just the idea that yes, the more that you exercise self-control, the easier that it gets, and not just in one area, but all areas. So I say that to hopefully encourage people. Right. The last thing I'm going to say, okay? On the subject of exercising self-control, putting these actions in place to stay focused and to eliminate spiritual distractions. No, it's not easy, but if it was easy, then everyone would do it. And then if that were true, then it wouldn't be impressive, especially not impressive to God. AJ's opinion, AJ's conviction is that, yes, it's difficult, but that's what makes it impressive. And that's what makes it special, is by actually doing these things to stay focused is what I think is impressive to God. This is Ephesians 5:16. Make the best use of the time, because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is, and do not get drunk with wine, for that is debauchery, but be filled with the Spirit. And I say that to say, make every day count. Our time on this planet is one of the assets that the Lord gives us that we're supposed to be a good steward of. And so I say it all to say, as we fight this good fight, make every day count, do everything you can. But that's it. I think that's all I got.
Okay, yeah.
So we talked about today, like I said earlier, we went over spiritual distractions, what they are. We talked about how we get distracted. We talked about how to fight that. Give you guys a challenge. Take it seriously, please. Yeah. And did you have anything else?
No,
Okay.
everything's great.
Yeah, I guess let us know in the comments if there's any other ways in which we get distracted that Delaney and I maybe didn't cover. Let us know, definitely let us know if there's ways in which you know to fight those distractions that we also did not go over. I think that would be beneficial to share with others.
Yeah.
And if there's anything that you want to share on something personal that after this you felt convicted you need to change or work on, let us know.
Yeah, sure. We'll see you guys next time.
Yeah. And that concludes our episode. I have been your host, AJ.
And I'm Delaney.
See you next time.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Soul Lab with AJ and Delaney. You can find all materials referenced from today's episodes in the show notes. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, comment, and subscribe. Check out our website for more episodes and stay tuned for the next release. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.